it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Now let me tell you a little bit about when I was younger, a little bit more foolish and not as worldly wise as I am now. I was madly in love with this young woman, and everything was just wonderful, and I had this chance to go and live abroad in the United States for a couple of years, and it of course meant sacrificing this relationship. And in the end, I chose the opportunity to go abroad over the relationship. And it's always been a case of, what if? It turned out all right in the end because she was an absolute nutter. God damn it, I'm taking a chance of not listening to this one ever. But yeah, everything turned out well. And then after a year or two, I met somebody else, and I did move abroad for her, and we're still together more than 25 years later. So life turned out pretty well. But that is a central theme of tonight's story. Would you be prepared to make a huge life move for the sake of another human being? To make sure that they're safe and everything's going well and all that kind of thing? Or would you not do it? Oof, it's such a dilemma. If any of you have got any stories like that, I'd love to read about them in the comment section below after you've listened to this story. Anyway, that kind of sets the scene for what's going on in tonight's story. One I think you're going to love. Exotic location, incredible characters, and strange entities. Well, without further ado, here we go with I Journeyed into the Real Heart of Darkness. The locals call it the Asili. Part 1. I don't really know how to begin with this. Okay, my name is Henry Cartwright. I'm 26 years old and, well, I have a story to tell. I've never told anyone this before, God forbid, but something happened to me a couple of years ago. Something horrible, well, beyond horrible. In fact, it happened to me and 7 others. Only 2 of them are still alive, well, as far as I'm aware. The reason that I'm telling this now is because, well, it's been eating me up inside. The last 2 years have been absolute torture, and I can't tell this to anyone without being sent back to the loony bin. The 2 others that survived, I can't talk to them about it because they won't speak to me, and I don't blame them. I've been riddled with such unbearable guilt at what happened 2 years ago, and if I don't say something now, I don't know how much longer I can last. If I will even last, whether I say anything or not. Now, before I tell you this story about what happened to the lot of us, there's something you need to understand. What I'm about to tell you, you won't believe, and I don't expect you to. Well, I couldn't give 2 shits if anyone believed me or not. I'm doing this for me, for those who died, and for the 2 who still have to live on with this. I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to tell you everything, and you're going to judge me. Even if you don't believe me, you're going to judge me. In fact, you'll despise me. I've been despising myself. For the past 2 years, all I've done since I've been out of that jungle is numb myself with drink and drugs. Numb enough that I don't even recall ever being inside that place. That only makes it worse. Far worse. But I can't help myself. I've gotten all the mental health support I can get. I've been in and out of the psychiatric ward, given a roundabout of doctors and a never-ending supply of pills. But what help is all that when you can't even tell the truth about what really happened to you? Well, as far as the doctors know, as far as the world knows, all that happened was that a group of stupid adults who thought they knew how to solve the world's problems got themselves lost in one of the most dangerous parts of the world. Oh, if only they knew how dangerous that place really is. That's the real reason why I'm telling my story now. Because as long as that place exists, as long as no one does anything about it, none of us are safe. None of us. I journeyed into the real heart of darkness. And the locals, they call it the Asili. Like I said, this all happened around 2 years ago. I was living a comfortable life in North London at the time, waiting tables and washing dishes for a living. That's what happens when you drop out of university, I guess. Life was good though, you know. Like it was comfortable. I look forward to the football at the weekend, and honestly, London isn't that bad a place to live. Well, it's busy as hell. People and traffic everywhere, but London just seems like one of those places that brings the whole world to your feet. And one day, though, I get a text from my girlfriend, Naadia. Or at the time, well, my ex-girlfriend, Naadia. She was studying in the States at the time, and we tried to keep it going long distance. But you know how it goes. You just lose touch. Anyways, she texts me, wanting to know if we can do a video chat or something. I said yes, and being the right idiot I was, I thought maybe she wanted to try things out again. That wasn't exactly the case. I mean, she did say that she missed me and was always thinking about me, and I thought the same, but no, she actually had some bad news. She actually had some news. She had this group of friends, you see, an activist group. They called themselves the, BADS, B-A-D-S. And what that stood for, I don't know. They were basically this group of activist students that wanted equal rights for all races, genders and stuff. Now, anyways, Naadia tells me that her and her friends were all planning this trip to Africa together. To the Congo, actually. And she says that they're all going to start their own commune there, in the ecosystem of the rainforest. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It sounds batshit mad. And that's what I said. Naadia did somewhat agree with me, but her reasoning was that the world isn't getting any more equal and it's never really going to change. And so her friend said, why not start our own community in paradise? I'm not sure a war-torn country riddled with disease counts as paradise, but I guess to an American, any exotic jungle might seem that way. Anyways, Naadia then says to me that the group are short of people going, and she wondered if I was interested in joining their commune. Now, I of course said no, no fucking thank you, but she kept insisting. She mentioned that the real reason we broke up was because her friends had been planning this trip for a long time, and she didn't think our relationship was worth carrying on anymore. She still loved me, she said, and that she wanted us to get back together. Now, as happy as I was to hear she wanted me back, this didn't exactly sound like the Naadia I knew. I mean, Naadia was smart, really smart, actually. And she did get carried away with politics and that, but even for her, this felt all quite mad. I told her I'd think about it for a week, and, well, against my better judgment, I said yes. I said yes, not because I wanted to go. Of course I didn't want to go. I mean, who seriously wants to go live in the middle of the frickin' jungle? I said yes because I still loved her, and I was worried about her. I was worried she'd get into some real trouble down there, and I wanted to make sure she'd be all right. I just assumed the commune idea wouldn't work, and when Naadia and her friends realized that, they'd all sod off back to the States. I just wanted to be there in case anything did happen. Maybe I was just as much of an idiot as them lot. God, we were all idiots. Well, a few months and malaria shots later, I was boarding a plane at Heathrow Airport and heading to Kinshasa, capital of the Democratic Congo. My big sister Ellie, she begged me not to go. She said I was putting myself in danger, and I agreed. But I felt like I didn't really have a choice. My girlfriend was going to a dangerous place, and I felt I had to do something about it. My sister, she basically raised me. We both came from a dodgy family, you see, and so I always saw her as a kind of mom. It was hard saying goodbye to her because I didn't really know what was going to happen. But I told her I'd be fine and that I was coming back, and she said, you better. Anyways, I get on the plane, and that's when things really start to get weird. It was a long flight, so I tried to get plenty of sleep, and that's when the dreams start. Or rather, the, same dream. I dreamt I was already in the jungle, but I couldn't move. I was just floating through the trees, and that, like I was watching a David Attenborough documentary or something. Next thing I know, there's this fence, or barrier of sorts, running through the jungle. It was made up of these long wooden spikes, crisscrossed with one another, sort of like a long row of X's. But on the other side of this fence, the rest of the jungle was like, it was pitch black. Well, you couldn't see what was on the other side. But I can't remember where I wanted to. I wanted to go to the other side like it was calling me. I feel myself being pulled through to the other side of the fence and into the darkness, and I feel terrified but, well, excited at the same time. And that's when I wake up back in the plane. I'm all panicked and covered in sweat, and so I go to the toilet to splash water on my face. And that's when I realize I really don't want to be doing this. All I think now of doing is landing in Kinshasa and catching the first plane back to Heathrow. Well, I'm still asking myself now why I never did. I land in Kinshasa, and after what seemed like an eternity, I worked my way out to the airport to find Naadia and her friends. Their plane had landed earlier in the day, and so I had to find them by 1 p.m. sharp, as we all had a riverboat to catch by 3. I eventually find Naadia and the group waiting for me outside the terminal doors. They looked like they'd been waiting a while. As much anxiety I had at the time about all of this, well, it still felt really damn good to see Naadia again. And she seemed more than happy to see me too. We hugged and made out a little. Oof, it had been a while after all. And then she introduced me to her friends. I was surprised to see there was only 6 of them, as I just presumed there was going to be a lot more. But who in their right mind would agree to go along with all of this? Well, the first 6 members of this group were Beth, Chantal, and Angela. Beth and Angela were a couple, and Chantal was Nadia's best friend. Even though we didn't know each other, Chantal gave me a big hug, as though she did. That's Americans for you, I guess. The other 3 members were all lads, Ty, Jerome, and Moses. Moses was the leader. He was this tall, intimidating guy who looked like he only worked out his chest. And he wore this gold cross necklace as though to make himself look important. Now, Moses wasn't his real name. It's just what he called himself. He was a kind of religious nut of sorts, but he looked more like an American football player than anything else. Now, right from the beginning, Moses never liked me. Whenever he even acknowledged me, he would call me something like Oliver Twist or Mary Poppins. Either that or he would try mimicking my accent to make me sound like a chimney sweeper or something. Jerome was basically a copy-and-paste version of Moses. It's like he idolized him or something, always following him around and repeating whatever he said. And then there was Ty. Even for a guy, I could tell that Ty was good-looking. He kind of looked like a Rastafarian, but his dreads only went down to his neck. Out of the 3 of them, Ty was the only one who bothered to shake my hand. But something about it seemed disingenuous, like someone had forced him to do it. I think I forgot to mention it, but everyone in the group was black. The only ones who weren't were me and Angela. Angela wasn't part of the Bats. She was just Beth's girlfriend. But Angela, she was pretty cool. She was a little bit older than the rest of us, and she apparently had an army background. I mean, it wasn't hard to tell. She had short boy's hair and looked like she did a lot of rock climbing or something. She didn't really talk much and mostly kept to herself. But it actually made me feel easier with her there. Not because of, but because neither of us were Bats members. From what Naadia told me, Moses was hoping to create a black utopia of sorts. His argument was that humanity began in Africa, and so, as an African-American group, Africa would be the perfect destination for their commune. I guess me and Angela tagging along kind of ruined all that. As much as Moses really didn't like me, Ty, it turned out Ty hated me for different reasons. Sometimes I would just catch him staring at me, like he just hated the shit out of me. I wouldn't learn till later why that was. What happens next was the journey up the Congo River. Not much really happened, so I'll just try my best to skip through it. Luckily for us, the river was right next to the airport, so reaching it didn't take long, which meant we got to avoid the hours-long traffic. As bad as I thought London traffic was, Kinshasa was apparently much worse. Well, we get to the river and it's huge. I mean, really huge. The Congo River was apparently one of the largest rivers in the world, and it's basically made the Thames look like a puddle. Anyways, we get there, and there's this guy waiting for us by an old wooden boat with a motor. Thought he looked pretty shady, but Moses apparently arranged the whole thing. This guy, he only ever spoke French, so I never really understood what he was saying. But Moses spoke some French, and he pays him the money. We all jump in the boat with our things, and the man starts taking us up the river. Well, the journey upriver was good and bad. The region we were going to was days away, and it gave me time to reacquaint with Naadia. And the scenery, well, it was unbelievable. To begin with, there were people on the river everywhere, fishing in their boats or canoes, and ferries more crammed than the London Underground. At the halfway point of our journey, we stopped at this huge, crowded port town called Mundanka to get supplies, and after that, everything was different. Well, the river, I mean. The scenery. It's like we'd left civilization behind or something. Everything was green and exotic. It honestly felt like we'd stepped back in time with the dinosaurs. Someone on the boat did say that the Congo had its own version of the Loch Ness Monster somewhere. That it's a water dinosaur that lives deep in the jungle. It's called the, Makole Bembe or something like that. Where we were going, I couldn't decide whether I was hoping to see it or not. I did look forward to seeing some animals on this trip, and Naadia told me we'd probably get to see hippos or elephants, but that was a total letdown. We could hear birds and monkeys in the trees along the river, but we never really got to saw them. Yes, I thought this boat ride was going to be a safari of sorts. We did see a group of crocodiles sunbathing on the riverbank, and if there was one thing on that boat ride I feared the most, it was definitely crocodiles. I think I avoided going near the edge of the boat the entire way there. When the heat on the boat was unbearable. For like half the journey it just poured with rain, but the humidity was like nothing I'd ever experienced. In the last 2 days of the boat ride, all it did was rain constantly. I mean, we were all drenched, and the river started to get more and more narrow, like narrow enough for only one boat to fit through. The guy driving the boat started speeding around the bends of the river at a dangerous speed. I honestly didn't know why he was in a rush all of a sudden. We curve around one bend, and that's when we all notice a man waving us down by the side of the bank. It's like he'd been waiting for us. Turns out this was also planned. The man, Fabrice, I think his name was, he was to take us through the rainforest to where the group had decided to build their commune. Moses paid the boat driver the rest of the money, and without even a goodbye, the guy turns his boat round and speeds off. It's like he didn't want to be in this region any longer than he had to. It honestly made me very nervous. We trekked on foot for a couple of days, and honestly the humidity was even worse inside the rainforest. But the mosquitoes, that was truly the fucking worst. Most of us got very bad diarrhea too, and I think we all had to stop about 100 times just so someone could empty their guts behind a tree. Now on the last day the rain was just pouring down. I couldn't decide whether it was too hot or too cold. I remember thinking that I couldn't go on any longer. I was exhausted. We all were. Just as the journey seemed like it would never end, the guide, Fabrice, he suddenly just stops. He stops and is just frozen, just looking ahead and not moving an inch. And Moses and Jerome tried snapping him out of it, but then he just suddenly starts taking steps back like he'd hit a dead end. And Fabrice's English wasn't the best, but he just starts saying, "I go back. You go. I go back." Basically what he meant was that we had to continue without him. Moses tried convincing him to stay, even offered him more money, but Fabrice was clearly too afraid to go on. And before he left, he did give us a map with directions on where to find the place we were going to. He wished us all good luck. Then he stops and just, he's staring at me, dead in the eye. And he said, "Good luck, Arsenal." Like me, Fabrice liked his football. I even let him keep my Arsenal cap I was wearing. But when he said that to me, it was like he was wishing me luck most of all. Like I needed it the most. It was only later that day that we reached the place where we'd planned to build our commune. The rain had stopped by now, and we found ourselves in the middle of a clearing inside the rainforest. This is where our commune was going to be. When everyone realized we'd reached our destination, every one of us dropped our backpacks and fell to the floor. God, I think we were all ready to die. Well, this place was surprisingly quiet. You could only hear the birds singing in the trees and the sound of swooshing that we later learned was from a nearby stream. In the next few days, we all managed to get our strength back, pitched our tents, and started working out the next steps for building the commune. Moses was the leader, and you could tell he was trying to convince everyone that he knew what he was doing. But the guy was clearly out of his depth. We all were. Well, that was except for Angela. She pointed out that we needed to make a perimeter around the area, set up booby traps and tripwires. The nearby stream had fish, and she said she'd teach us all how to spear them. She also showed us how to make bows and arrows and spears for hunting. Honestly, it just seemed like there was nothing she couldn't do. And if she wasn't there, I doubt any of us would have survived out there for long. On the entire journey, from landing in Kinshasa, the boat ride up the river and hiking through the jungle, whenever I managed to get some sleep, I kept having these really uncomfortable dreams. It was always the same dream. I'm in the jungle, floating through the trees and bushes before I'm stopped in my tracks by the same makeshift barrier fence, and the pure darkness on the other side, and every time I'm wanting to go enter it. I don't know why, because this part of the dream always terrifies me. It's like I have to find what's on the other side. Something was calling me. On the third night in our new commune, though, I dreamt something different. I dreamt I was actually on the other side. I can't remember how much of it I saw, but it was dark, really dark. But I could walk. I was walking through the darkness, and I could only just make out the trunks of trees and the occasional branch or vine. But then I saw a light. Ahead, only 20 meters away. I tried walking towards the light, but it was hard. Like when you walk or run in your dreams, but you barely move anywhere. I do catch up to the light, and it's just a light glowing. But then I enter it. I enter and I realize I've entered what I've entered is now a clearing, a perfect circle inside the jungle. Dark green vegetation around the curves, and inside the circle, right bang in the middle, is one single tree, or at least the trunk of a tree, a dead, rotting tree. It had these long, snake-like roots that curled around the circle's edges, and the wood was very dark, almost black in color. A pathway leads up to the tree, and I start walking along it. The closer I get to this tree, I see just how tall it must have been originally. A long stump of a tree leaning over me like a tower. Its shadow comes over me, and I feel like I've been swallowed up. But then the tree's shadow moves away from me, as though beyond the jungle's darkness is a hidden rotating sun. And when the shadow disappears, I see a face. High above me on the bark of the tree, carved into it. It looked like a mask, like an African tribal mask. The face was round, and it only had slits for eyes and a mouth, but somehow the face looked like it was in agony, the most unbearable agony. I could feel it. God, it was like torture, like being stabbed all over 1,000,000 times or having your own skin peeled off while you're just standing there. I then feel something down by my ankles. I look down to my feet, and around me, around the circle, I see the floor of the circle is covered with what looks like hands. Severed hands scattered all over. I try and raise my feet, panicking. God, I'm too scared to step on them, but then the hands start moving, twitching their fingers. They start crawling like spiders all around the circle. And the ones by my feet start to crawl up my legs, and I'm too scared to brush them off, and now I feel myself almost being molested by them, but I can't even move or do anything. I feel an unbearable weight come over me, and I fall to the floor, and that's when I hear a zip. Part 2. I wake, and in the darkness of mine and Naadia's tent, a light blinds me. I squint my eyes towards it, and peeking in from outside the tent is Moses, Ty, and Jerome, each holding a wooden spear. They tell me to get dressed as I'm going spear fishing with them, and Naadia berates them for waking us up so early. Now, I'm by no means a morning person, but even with Naadia lying next to me, I really didn't want to lie back down in the darkness, with the disturbing dream I'd just had fresh in my mind. I just wanted to forget about it instantly. Didn't even want to think about it. Now, later on, the four of us are in the stream trying to catch our breakfast. We're all just standing there with our poorly made spears for like half an hour before any fish come our way. Eventually, the first one came in my direction, and the three lads just start yelling at me to get the fish. "There it is. Get it. Go on, get it." I tried my best to spear it, but it was too fast, and them lot shouting at me wasn't helping. Anyways, the fish gets away downstream, and the three of them just started yelling at me again, saying I was useless. I quickly lost my temper and started shouting back at them. God, ever since we got on the boat, these three guys did nothing but get in my face. They mocked my accent, told me nobody wanted me there, and behind my back they said they couldn't see what Naadia saw in that white limey. I had enough. I told all three of them to fuck off, that they could catch their own fucking fish from now on. As I'm about to leave the stream, Jerome yells at me. "Dude, watch out, there's a snake," pointing by my legs. I freak out and quickly raise my feet to avoid the snake. I panic so much that I lose my footing and splash down into the stream. Still freaking out over the snake near me, I then hear laughter coming from the three lads. There was no snake. Having completely had it with the lot of them, I march over to Jerome for no other reason but to punch his lights out. And Jerome was bigger than me and looked like he knew how to fight, but I didn't care. It was a long time coming. Before I can even try, Ty steps out in front of me, telling me to stop. I push Ty out of the way to get to Jerome, but Ty gets straight back in my face and shoves me over aggressively. Now, like I said, out of the three of them, Ty clearly hated me the most. He'd probably been looking for an excuse to fight me, and I'd just given him one. But just as I'm about to get into it with Ty, all four of us hear, "Guys." We all turn around to the voice to see it's Angela, standing above us on high ground, holding a perfectly made spear with 5 or more fish skewered on it. We all stared at her kind of awkwardly, like we were expecting to be yelled at. But instead, she just tells us to get out of the stream and follow her. She had something she needed to show us. The four of us followed behind Angela through the jungle, and Moses demanded to know where we were going. Angela says she's found something earlier on, but couldn't tell us what it was because she didn't even know. And when she shows us, we understand why she couldn't. I mean, it was indescribable. But I knew what it was, and it shook me to my core. What laid in front of us, from one end of the jungle to the other, was a fence. The exact same fence from my dream. It was a never-ending line of sharp, criss-crossed wooden spikes. Only what was different was this fence was completely covered in bits and pieces of dead, rotting animals. There were skulls, monkey skulls, animal guts, intestines, infested with what seemed like hundreds of flies buzzing around, and the smell was like nothing I'd ever smelt before. All of us were in shock. Didn't know what this thing was. Even though I recognized it, I didn't even know what it was, and while Angela and the others argued over what this was, I stopped and stared at what was scaring me the most. It was the other side. On the other side of the spikes was just more vegetation, but behind it you couldn't see anything. It was darkness, like the entrance of a huge tropical cave. And right as Moses and Angela start to get into a screaming match, we all turned to notice something behind us. Standing behind us, maybe 15 meters away, staring at us, was a group of 5 men. They were wearing these dirty, ragged clothes, like they'd had them for years, and they were all small in height. In fact, they were very small, almost like children. But they were all carrying weapons, bows and arrows, spears, machetes. Whoever these men were, they were clearly dangerous. There was an awkward pause at first, but then Moses shouts out, "Hello?" at them. He takes Angela's spear with the fish and starts slowly walking towards them. We all tell him to stop, but he doesn't listen. One of the men starts approaching Moses. Looks like he's their leader. There's only like 5 meters between them when Moses starts speaking to the man, telling them we're Americans and we don't mean them any harm. He then offered Angela's fish to the man, like an offering of some sort. Well, the way Moses went about this was very patronizing. He spoke slowly to the man, as he probably didn't know any English. But, well, he was wrong. In broken English, the man said, "You American?" Moses then says loudly that we're African American, like he forgot me and Angela were there. He again offers the fish to the man and says, "Here, we offer this to you." The man looks at the fish, almost insulted, but then he looks around past Moses and straight at me. And the man stares at me for a good long time, and even though I was afraid, I just stared right back at him. I thought that maybe he'd never seen a white man before, but something tells me he was something else. The man continues to stare at me with wide eyes, and then he shouts, "Our fish! You take our fish!" Frightened by this, we all start taking steps backwards, closer to the fence, and all Moses can do is stare back at us. The man then takes out his machete and points it towards the fence behind us, and he yells, "No safe here. You go home. Go back, America." The men behind him also began shouting at us, waving their weapons in the air, almost ready to fight us. We couldn't understand the language they were shouting at us in, but there was one word, a word I still remember. They were shouting at us, "Asili, Asili, Asili," over and over. Moses, the idiot he was, he then approached the man, trying to reason with him. The man then raises his machete up to Moses, threatening him with it. Moses throws his hands up for the man not to hurt him, and then he slowly makes his way back to us without turning his back to the man. As soon as Moses reaches us, we head back in the direction we'd come from, back to the stream and the commune. But the men continue shouting and waving their weapons at us, and as soon as we lose sight of them, we run. When we got back to the commune, we tell the others what had just happened, as well as what we'd seen. Like we thought they would, they freaked the fuck out. Well, we all speculated on what the fence was. Angela said that it was probably a hunting ground that belonged to those men, which they'd barricaded and made to look menacing to scare people off. This theory made the most sense, but what I didn't understand was, how the hell had I dreamed of it? How the hell had I dreamed of that fence before I even knew it existed? I didn't tell the others this because I was scared that they might think, well, what they might think. But when it was time to vote on whether we stayed or went back home, I didn't waste a second in raising my hand in favor of going. And it was the same for everyone else. The only one who didn't raise their hand was Moses. He wanted to stay. This entire idea of starting a commune in the rainforest, it was his. It clearly meant a lot to him, even at the cost of his life. His mind was more than made up on staying, even after having his life threatened, and he made it clear to the group that we were all staying where we were. And we all argued with him, told him he was crazy, and things were quickly getting out of hand. But that's when Angela took control. Once everyone had shut the fuck up, she then berated all of us. She said that none of us were prepared to come here, and that we'd all had no idea what we were doing. She was right. We didn't. She then said that all of us were going to go back home, no questions asked, like she was giving us an order. And if Moses wanted to stay, he could. But he'd be more than likely here to die alone. Moses said he was willing to die here, to be a martyr to the cause or some shit like that. But by the time it got dark, we all agreed that in the morning we were all going back downriver and back to Kinshasa. Despite being completely freaked out that day, I did manage to get some sleep. I knew we had a long journey back ahead of us, and even though I was scared of what I might dream, I slept anyways. And there I was, back at the fence. I moved through it, through to the other side, darkness and identical trees all around, and again I see the light, and again I'm back inside of the circle, with the huge black rotting tree stood over me. But what's different was the fence wasn't there. It was just the tree, but I could hear breathing coming from it. Soft but painful breathing, like someone was suffocating. Remembering their hands, I look around me, but nothing's there. It's just the circle. I look back to the tree and above me. High up on the tree, I see a man. He was small, like a child, but he was breathing very softly, but with painful breaths. His head was down, and I couldn't see his face. But what disturbed me was the rest of him. This man, this childlike man against the tree. He'd been crucified to it. He was stretched out around the tree, and it almost looked like it was birthing him. Oh, all I can do is look up to him, terrified, unable to wake myself up. But then the man looks down at me. Very slowly he looks down at me, and I can see, well, I can make out his features. His face is covered all over in scars. Tribal scars, waves, dots, spirals. His cheeks are very sunken in, and he almost doesn't look human. He opens his eyes with the little strength he has, and he says to me, or rather, he whispers, "Henry." He knew my name. That's when I wake up, back in my tent, all covered in sweat and panicked to hell. The rain outside was so loud my ears were ringing from it. I try to calm down so I don't wake Naadia beside me, but over the sound of the rain and my own panic breathing, I start to hear a noise. A zip. A very slow, zipping sound, like someone was trying carefully to break into the tent. I look to the entrance zip door to see if anyone's trying to enter, but it's too dark to see anything. Well, it didn't matter anyway, because I realized the zipping sound was coming from behind me. What I first thought was zipping was actually cutting. Someone was cutting their way through mine and Naadia's tent. Every night that we were there, I slept with a pocket knife inside my sleeping bag. I reach around to find it so I can protect myself from whoever's entering. Try not to make a sound. I think I find it. I better just adjust it in my hand when I feel a blunt force hit me in the back of the head. Not that I could see anything anyway, but everything suddenly went black. When I finally regain consciousness, everything around me is still dark. My head hurts like hell and I feel like vomiting. But what was strange was that I could barely feel anything underneath me, as though I was floating. That's when I realized I was being carried, and the darkness around me was coming from whatever was over my head, an old sack or something. I tried moving my arms and legs, but I couldn't. They were tied. I tried calling out for help, but I couldn't do that either. My mouth was gagged. I continued to be carried for a good while longer before suddenly I felt myself fall. I hit the ground very hard, which made my head even worse. I then feel someone come behind me, pulling me up on my knees. I can hear some unknown language being spoken around me and what sounded like people crying. I start to hyperventilate, and I fear I might suffocate inside whatever this thing was over my head. That's when a blinding bright light comes over me. Oh, it hurts my brain and my eyes, and I realize the sack over me has been taken off. I try painfully to readjust my eyes so I can see where I am, and when I do, a small childlike man is standing over me. The same man from the day before, who Moses tried giving the fish to. The only difference now was he was painted all over in some kind of grey paste. I then see beside him even more of the smaller man, also covered in grey paste. The rain was still pouring down, and the wet paste on their skin made them look like they were almost melting skeletons. I then hear the crying again. I look to either side of me, and I see all the other commune members, Moses, Jerome, Beth, Tai, Chantal, Angela, and Naadia, all on their knees, gagged with their hands behind their back. The short grey men standing over us then move away behind us. We realize where it is they've taken us. They brought us back to the fence. I can hear the muffled screams of everyone else as they realize where we are, and we all must have had that same exact thought. What is going to happen? The leader of the grey men then yells out an order in his language, and the others raise all of us to our feet, holding their machetes to the back of our necks. I look over to see Naadia crying. Oh, she looks terrified. She's just staring ahead at the fly-infested fence, assuming, well, we all did. A handful of the grey men in front of us are now opening up a loose part of the fence, like two gate doors. On the other side, through the gap in the fence, all I can see is darkness. The leader again gives out an order, and the next thing I know, most of the commune members are being shoved, forced forward into the gap of the fence on the other side. I can hear Beth, Chantal and Naadia crying. Moses, through the gag in his mouth, is pleading to them. Please, please stop. As I'm watching what I think is a kidnapping or worse, could be a murder happening right in front of me, and I realize that the only ones not being shoved through to the other side were me and Angela. Ty is the last to be moved through, but then the leader tells the others to stop. He stares at Ty for a good while before ordering his men not to push him through, instead to move him back next to the two of us. Stood side by side with our hands tied behind us, all the three of us can do is watch on as the rest of the commune vanish over the other side of the fence, one by one. The last thing I see is Naadia looking back at me, begging me to help her. But there's nothing I can do. I can't save her. She was the only reason I was here, and I was powerless to do anything. And that's when the darkness on the other side just seems to swallow them. I try searching through the trees and darkness to find Naadia, but I don't see her. I don't see any of them. I can't even hear them. It was as though they weren't there anymore. They were somewhere else. The leader then comes back in front of me. He stares up at me, and I realize he's holding a knife. I look at Angela and Ty, as though I'm asking them to help me, but they were just as helpless as I was. I can feel the leader of the grey men staring through me, as though through my soul, and then I see, as he lifts his knife higher, as high as my throat. Oh, thinking this is going to be the end, I cry uncontrollably, just begging him not to kill me. Well, the leader looks confused as I try and muffle out the words, and just as I think my throat is going to be slashed, he cuts loose the gag tied around my mouth, drawing blood. I look down to him confused before I'm turned around and he cuts my hands free from my back. I now see the other grey men are doing the same for Ty and Angela, to our confusion. I stare back down to the leader and he looks at me, and not knowing if we were safe now or if the worst was still yet to come, I put my hands together as though I'm about to pray, and I start begging him, before he yells, shut up, at me, this time raising the knife to my throat. He looks at me with wide eyes as though he's asking me, are you going to be quiet? I nod yes, and there's a long pause all round, and the leader says, in plain English, you go back. Your friend's gone now. They dead. You no return here. Go! He then shoves me backwards, and the other men do the same to Ty and Angela, in the opposite direction of the fence. The three of us now make our way away from the men, still yelling at us to leave, where again we hear the familiar word of Asili, Asili. But most of all, we were making our way away from the fence, and whatever danger or evil that we didn't know was lurking on the other side. The other side where the others now were. Now, if you're wondering why the three of us were spared from going in there, we only managed to come up with one theory. Me and Angela were white, so if we were to go missing, there would be more chance of people coming to look for us. I know that's not good to say, but it's probably true. As for Ty, he was mixed race, and so maybe they thought one white parent was enough for caution. The three of us went back to our empty commune, to collect our things and get the hell out of this place we never should have come to. Angela said the plan was to make our way back to the river, flag down a boat, and get a ride back down to Kinshasa. Ty didn't agree with this plan. He said as long as his friends were still there, he wasn't going to go anywhere. Angela said that was stupid, and the only way we could help them was to contact the authorities as soon as possible. To Ty's and my own surprise, I agreed with him. I said the only reason I came here was to make sure Naadia didn't get into any trouble, and if I left her in there with God knows what, this entire trip would have been for nothing. I suggested that our next plan of action was to find a way through the other side of the fence and look for the others. It was obvious by now that me and Ty really didn't like each other, which at the time seemed to be for no good reason, but for the first time, he looked at me with respect. We both made it perfectly clear to Angela that we were staying to look for the others. Angela said we were both dumb fucks, and we were going to get ourselves killed. I couldn't help but agree with her. Staying in this jungle any longer than we needed to was basically a death wish for us, like when you decide to stay in a house once you know it's haunted. But I couldn't help myself. I had to go to the other side, not because I felt responsible for Naadia, but I had an obligation to go and save her, but no, it was because I had to know what was there. What was in there, hiding amongst the darkness of the jungle? I was afraid, beyond terrified actually, but something in there was calling me, and for some reason I just had to find out what it was. Not knowing what mystery lurked behind that fence was making me want to rip off my own face, peel by peel. Well, Angela went silent for a while. You could clearly tell she wanted to leave us here and save her own skin, but by leaving us here she knew she would be leaving us to die. Neither me nor Ty knew anything about the jungle, let alone how to look for people missing in it. Angela groaned and said, "Oh, fuck it." She was going in with us, and so we planned on how we were going to get to the other side without detection. We eventually realized we just had to risk it. We had to find a part of the fence, hack our way through, and then just enter it. And that's what we did. Angela, with a machete she'd bought at Mdanka, hacked her way through 2 different parts, creating a loose gate of sorts. When she was done, she gave the go-ahead for me and Ty to tug the loose piece of the fence away with a long piece of rope. Well, we now had our entranceway. All 3 of us stared into the dark space between the fence, which might as well have been the entrance to hell. Each of us took a deep breath, and before we dared to go in, Angela turns to say to us, "Remember, you guys asked for this." None of us really wanted to go inside there. Not really. I think we knew we probably wouldn't get out alive. I had my secret reason, and Ty had his. We grabbed each other by the hand, as though we thought we might easily get lost from each other. With a final anxious breath, Angela led the way through the gap in the fence, through the first leaves, branches, and bush, through to the other side, and finally into the darkness, like someone's eyes when they fall asleep, not knowing when or if they'll wake up. Well, this is where I have to stop. I can't go on any further. I thought I could when I started this, but no. This is all I can say. For now, anyway. What really happened to us in there, God, I don't know if I can even put it into words. All I can say is that what happened to us already, it was nothing compared to what we would eventually go through. What we found. God, even if I told you what happens next, you wouldn't believe me. But you would also wish I never had. There's still a part of me now that thinks it might not have been real. For the sake of my soul, for the things I was made to do in there, I really hope this is just one big nightmare. Even if the nightmare never ends. Oh, just please don't let it be real. Well, in case I never finish this story, in case I'm not alive to tell it, I'll leave you with this. I googled the word Asili a year ago, trying to find what it meant. It's a Swahili word, and it means the beginning. Part 3. Well, it's been a year now. You've all been asking me to finish the story. You've been trying to track me down, spreading my story on the internet, coming up with your theories as to what the Asili really is. Well, you were all wrong. You want to know how the story ends? Fine, I'll tell you. But everything I've told you so far, the fence, the grey men, our friends lost inside the Asili, everything that comes next is what I've been afraid to tell. The stuff of nightmares. Well, we'd passed through the barrier and entered the darkness on the other side. I woke up and all I could see were the tops of trees high above me. They were that tall I couldn't even see where they ended. Couldn't even see the sky. I remember not knowing where I was. Couldn't even remember how I'd ended up in this jungle. I hear Angela's voice and I see her and Ty standing over me. Didn't even remember who they were at first. I think they knew that because Angela asked me if I know where we are. I take a look at my surroundings and I see the jungle. We were surrounded on all sides by a never-ending maze of almost identical trees. They were large and unusually shaped, the trunks were twisted and the branches were like the bodies of snakes, and everything was dim. Not dark, but dim. It all comes back to me. The river, the jungle, the fence, the grey man. We were on the other side. We were in the Asili. We're here to look for others, for Naadia. Yes. I take another look around and I realize we're right bang in the middle of the jungle, as if we'd already been trekking through it. I asked Ty and Angela where the fence had gone, but they asked me the same thing, and they didn't know. They said all three of us woke up on the jungle floor, but I didn't wake for another good hour. This didn't make any sense. I started freaking out, and Ty and Angela tried to calm me down. Not knowing what to do next, we decided we needed to find which way the rest of the commune went. Angela said they would have tried to find a way back to the fence, and so we needed to head south. The only problem was, we didn't know which way south was. The jungle was too dark and we couldn't even use the sun because we couldn't see it. The only way we could find where south was to guess. Following what we hoped was south, we walked for days through the dimness of the jungle, continually having to climb over the large roots of trees. And although the jungle was flat, we felt as though we'd been going up a continual incline. As the days went by, me, Ty, and Angela began to recognize the same things. Every tree we passed was almost identical in a way. They were the same size, same shape, and even the same sort of contortion. But what was even stranger to us, stranger than the identical trees, was the sound. There was no sound, none at all. No birds singing in the trees, no monkeys howling. Even by our feet, there were no insects of any kind. The jungle was dead quiet. And the only sound came from us, from our footsteps, our exhausted breaths. It was as if nothing lived here, as if nothing even existed on this side of the fence. Even though we knew something was seriously wrong with this jungle, we had no choice but to continue, either to find the others or to find the fence. We were so exhausted that we lost count of the number of days we'd been trekking. Even Angela forgot. On one of those days, I felt as though I'd reached my breaking point. I'd been lagging behind the others for the past 2 days. I couldn't feel my legs anymore, just pain. I struggled to breathe with the humidity. Well, that was still here on this side of the jungle. I'd already used up all my water from my backpack, and I was too scared to sleep through the night. On this side of the fence, I was afraid the dreams would be far more intense. Through the dim daylight of the jungle, I wasn't sure if I was seeing things or hearing things. What fueled me to keep going was to find Naadia. And if not, even that, to find what was here, what was calling me. It didn't even matter anymore because I was done. It all became too much for me. The pain, the exhaustion, the heat. I decided I was done. And by the roots of some tree, I collapsed down, knowing I wouldn't be getting up any time soon. And realizing I wasn't behind them, Ty and Angela came back for me. They berated me to get back on my feet and start walking. We didn't have time on our side, after all. I told him I couldn't. Just couldn't carry on anymore. Needed time to rest, hoping the two of them would be somewhat sympathetic. That's when Ty suddenly starts screaming at me. He accused me of not taking responsibility, and that all this mess was my fault. He was blaming me. Too tired to argue, I just simply told him to fuck off. But he wasn't having it. He said he hated guys like me that didn't follow things through or some shit like that. I reminded him that we both chose to go beyond the fence, not just me. Well, Angela told us to stop. She said we didn't have time for this shit. And Ty, clearly not wanting to leave anything unsaid, only brought Naadia into it. He claimed she didn't really want to be with me. He said the commune didn't have enough members, and so Naadia tricked me into going. That later down the line, she'd break up with me once the commune was a success. I didn't believe him. I was pissed. I called him a liar. Said him and the others just couldn't stand to see one of their own with a white guy. And that's when he said it. What I'd suspected all along. He didn't hate me just because I was with Naadia. He hated me because he was with Naadia. Well, she didn't end things with me because we were drifting apart, or this frickin' trip to Africa. It's because she was with him. Oh, it was all a lie. God, I'd risk my life for her. For a lie. Well, I think all three of us knew where this was going, and before it did, Angela tried shutting the whole thing down. She told me to get the fuck up and for Ty to keep walking. She said, "We're not doing this now." But she knew, she already fucking knew. Ty already finished what he'd had to say, but I wasn't done with him. Despite how tired I was, I got to my feet and shouted after him. I demanded to know if it was true. Well, he didn't answer me, he just kept on walking. Even though he had his back turned to me, I saw that stupid grin on his face. Wanted to make him angry, I got right behind him and shoved him in the back as hard as I could. It worked. Ty turns and gets in my face, warns me not to get into it with him. Wanted to get further under his skin, and then say it doesn't matter if he was with Naadia or not, because one thing was still true. Confused as to what I was talking about, I then said to him, "Well, it's true what they say, you know. Once you go wide, all the rest are shite." Expecting Ty to punch my lights out, he instead tackles me hard to the floor, and he just starts wailing punches at me. I've never been much of a fighter, and the only thing I think to do is to try and gouge his eyes. It works, and I can hear him yelling out in pain. But suddenly he grabs me by the wrist and twists me hard enough to get me on my back. Then puts me in a chokehold and starts squeezing the light out of me. I can't breathe. I can already feel myself passing out. Oh, images start coming to me. The fence, the tree with the face. Naadia. Just as everything's about to go black, Angela effortlessly breaks up the hold. While she puts Ty in an arm lock, telling him to calm down, I do all I can just to get my breath back. And just as I think I'm safe from passing out, I feel something underneath me. I get up on all fours, and underneath me is just a pile of dead leaves, but there's something hard underneath it. I press down on the leaves, and something feels almost metallic. Sound comes back in my ears, and I can hear Angela shouting at me. Feeling something underneath me, I brush away the dead leaves, and what I find is a fence. Well, not the same fence we'd passed through, but an old rusty wire fence. Angela and Ty realize I've stumbled onto something, and they come over to help brush away the dead leaves. We discover beneath the leaves an old and very long metal fence lining the jungle floor, which eventually ends at some broken hinges. That's not all we found. Further down the fence, Angela found a sign. A big red sign on the fence with words written on it. It was hard to read because of the rust, but the first word said, "Danger." The other two words were in French, but Ty knew enough French to understand what it meant. The sign said, "Danger. Keep out." We made camp that night and discussed the metal fence in full. Angela suggested that the fence may have been put there for some sort of containment, that inside this part of the jungle was some deadly disease, and that's why we hadn't come across any animal life. But if that was true, why was the metal fence this far in? Why wasn't it where the wooden fence was, where this dark part of the jungle began? It just didn't make sense. Angela then suggested that we may even have crossed into another dimension, and that's why the jungle was now darker and uninhabited, and could maybe explain why we passed out upon entering it. Well, we didn't have any answers, just theories. We trekked again for the next couple of days, and our food supply was running dangerously low. We'd used up all of our water by now, but luckily this jungle had rain, and was more than moist for us to soak whatever we could from the leaves. Oh, you wouldn't believe how freaking good leafy moist water tastes after a day of thirst. Nothing seemed like it could get any worse. This dim, dead jungle was a never-ending labyrinth of the same freaking trees over and over. Every day was the same. Walk through the jungle, rest at night. Freaking Groundhog Day. We might as well have been walking in circles. But that's when Angela came up with a plan. Now her plan was to climb up a tree until we found ourselves at the very top, in the hopes of finding wherever the jungle ended, any sliver of civilization or anything. Well, I grew up in London. I'd never even seen trees this big, and what's worse, I was terrified of heights. Well, the tree was easy enough to climb because of its irregular shape. The only problem was we didn't know if the treetops even ended. They were like massive frickin' beanstalks. Well, we start climbing the tree and must have been climbing for about half an hour before we finally found something. We're even halfway up the tree. Angela, ahead of us, tells us to stop. We ask what's wrong, but she doesn't answer. She's just staring over at a long snake-like branch. Me and Ty see it. It wasn't the branch she was staring at, it was what was on the branch. We didn't know what it was at first, so we got closer to it. Some sort of white material hanging from the branches, almost like a string puppet. And whatever this thing was, it was extremely long. Had to have been 50 feet. We still didn't know what the hell this thing was, and so Angela gets close enough to feel it. She could barely describe to us what it felt like, but she said it was almost rubbery in texture. But eventually we realized what it was, and when we did, it made all of our skins crawl. It was snake skin. Oh, this skin, this 50 feet long skin, it belonged to a snake. How big was this fucking snake? The first time in this jungle, the three of us realized we weren't alone, and if its skin was up here in the trees, then it was probably in the trees. We climbed down from that tree immediately. Oh, if this snake was still around, we didn't want to be around when it found us. We thought we knew the answers now. We thought we knew why this place was contained. A massive 50 fucking feet long snake. It seemed big enough to swallow a cow. If this snake was in here, then what else was in here? More snakes? Worse. Is that why the grey men warned us to stay away from this place? Is that why Naadia and the others were thrown in here? Some sort of sacrifice to it? We thought we were finally beginning to solve the mystery of this place. But we were wrong. Dead wrong. I did sleep a handful of those nights. As terrified as the dreams made me, well, I still wanted answers. Ty and Angela thought we'd found them, and even though I knew we hadn't, I let them keep on believing it. For some reason, I was too afraid to tell them about my dreams. Maybe they also had the same dreams, but like me, kept it to themselves. But I needed answers. How had I foreseen the fence? What was the tree with the face? The crucified man? God, I needed the answers. I needed it. That night, knowing there was a huge prehistoric-sized snake that could take any one of us at any minute, I chose not to sleep. We usually took turns during the night to keep watch, but I kept watch that whole night. All night I stared into the pure black darkness around us, just wondering what the hell was out there, waiting for us. I stared into the darkness, and it was as if the darkness was staring back at me, laughing at me. Whatever it was that brought me into this place, it must have been watching me. I guessed it was now probably the early hours of the morning, but pure darkness was still all around. The fire had gone out, and I couldn't see anything, not even my own hands. Like every night in this place, it was dead quiet. Then I hear something. God, it was so faint I could barely hear it. Must have been so far away. I thought maybe my sleep deprivation was causing me to hear things again, but the sound seemed to be getting louder, just so slightly, like someone was turning up a car radio inch by inch. The sound was clearer to me now, but I couldn't even describe it to myself. It was like a vibration getting louder ever so slightly. As the minutes passed by, I quickly realized this wasn't some vibration. No, it was a wailing. A distant but loud, ghostly wail, and it was getting louder, closer, close enough that I knew I had to wake up Angela. Well, she was deep in sleep, but I managed to kick her awake. Almost instantly, she heard the sound and was alert to it. We both listened. It was getting closer. We woke up Ty, and the three of us looked around to find which way the wails were coming from. It seemed to be coming from all around us. We quickly got our things and got the hell out of there. But wherever we went, the sound was following us amongst the darkness. Oh, it was so loud by now that we couldn't even hear one another. We put our headlights on and followed behind Angela, but no matter where we went, it just seemed like we were heading directly towards the sound. Barely able to see anything, we were stopped in our tracks by a large tree root, and we desperately had to climb over it because the wailing was now directly behind our backs. I struggled to climb over, and I could hear Angela yelling, "Come on, hurry up!" We ran down the other side of the tree, thinking we'd finally managed to outrun the sound. But it was waiting for us, and we'd run directly into it. We ran into the sound, and I realized what it was. It was people, dozens and dozens of them, all around us. And from my headlight I could see their faces, men, women, children, the elderly. They were barely clothed in torn pieces of cloth, and they were so skinny. They were basically just skin and bones. Their eyes were pure white like they were blind, and they began to grab at us, claw at us, pulling us to the ground. Oh, there were so many of them on top of me I couldn't move, thinking I was going to be ripped apart. I then noticed something. None of them, absolutely none of them, had any hands. Some of them didn't even have wrists, just stumps where their hands and arms should have been. Their groans were so loud on top of me, I couldn't hear myself think. I couldn't breathe. Amongst the countless groans, I then hear what sounds like gunshots. The armless zombie people on top of me start to move away, but my body's still pinned down. I then feel an arm. Oh, it was Angela. Holding a revolver, she drags me to my feet. She shoots two more of them, and the entire horde are scared off. Once we find Ty, we just leg it out of there, shooting or shoving the zombie people out of our way. We ran so far that the sound of their groans was almost gone, and we kept running through the darkness as far away as we could from them. I was ready to collapse, but I was too afraid to stop. But then we did stop. The ground beneath us suddenly wasn't there anymore, and I felt myself falling. For a few seconds, we're just weightless before we crashed back down against the ground. God, I was in so much pain. I could feel leaves and dirt all over me, and when I tried to crawl up on my knees, I reached out to feel something in front of me. It felt like a wall, a dirt wall all around us. Realizing we've fallen into something, I look up with my headlight and see we've fallen into a 10-foot deep hole. I could see glimpses of Ty next to me. I could hear him moaning in pain, but I couldn't hear or see Angela. I look up again with my headlight and I see Angela pulling herself out of the hole. Oh, she must have managed to hold onto the edge. Once she was on the surface, me and Ty yelled out for her, but all Angela could do was stare down into the hole, clueless on how she'd get us out. Well, being trapped down there wasn't the worst of our problems. No, the groans had returned. We could hear them down here, but it now sounded like there were hundreds of them getting closer. We were too far down to see Angela's face, but we saw her headlight moving frantically back and forth, from us and the oncoming wails. We yelled out to her again, but she couldn't hear us. We were too far down and the sounds on the surface were too loud. Angela was shouting something back down to us, but we couldn't hear her either. I can't be certain what she said, but I think it was, "I'm sorry." Before the wails could reach us, could reach her, Angela's headlight was gone. She'd left us to the wails, to the dozens or even hundreds of zombie-like people. She left me alone with Ty. We were now down there for what felt like hours. Our headlights had died, leaving us both trapped in pure darkness. And for hours all we heard was the painful noise from the people above our heads. God, it was like fucking torture. I felt like I was going mad from it. Even though Ty was right next to me, I couldn't help but feel like I was completely alone down here, with only the darkness and the endless wails taking his and even Angela's place. But then, the darkness gives me something. Gives us something. A light, a faint, warm orange light. 10 feet above our heads. It was the reflection of fire. It seemed like it was moving repetitively around the edges of the circle. Ty must have seen it too, because suddenly I can feel him hitting me, getting my attention. And if there was fire, then there was people. I mean, real frickin' people. Even though it was useless, I tried yelling over the wails to whoever might be there. If the two of us wanted out of this hole, this was our only chance. But then something changed. The groans of the zombie people began to die down. Some of it changed into what sounded like screams. They were all screaming. But over the screams, I then heard what sounded like growls. Deep, aggressive animal growls. Well, it was like they were roaring, but there was something else up there. Then, as if all at once, the screams and thudding of footsteps above us suddenly just vanished away, back into the darkness where they'd come from. We could still hear them. Outside of that burning orange ring, we could hear the ones who didn't get away. We could hear them being ripped apart, eaten. We were no longer trapped by the endless wails. No, we were now trapped by something else. Something apparently worse, something that could rip us apart. Oh, it's all so clear to me now. Everything that happened to us. It was all planned. It was planned from the very beginning. For days we saw absolutely nothing, and then suddenly we saw everything at once. Those people, those zombie-like people, they were supposed to find us, and we were supposed to fall into that hole. It was divine intervention. Believe it or not, we did find the others. I did find Naadia, but we almost wished we hadn't. We knew there were monsters inside of this jungle now, and we did find our way out of that hole. But it wasn't monsters that were waiting for us on the surface. Well, not the monsters you're thinking of. What we found in that jungle wasn't monsters. It was men. White men. Part 4. Well, we're at the ending now. So much more happens from here on. I have to give you the short version because, well, the long version will kill me. I barely have anything left in me to finish the story. But what comes next is the true horror of the Asili. It's what I've been afraid to tell, so I just have to tell it the best I can. Me and Ty were in the hole. Terrified by the events of that night, we stayed awake till the dimness of the jungle's daylight returned to the surface. Still pitch black inside our hole, but at least from the dim circular light above us, we knew the horrors of the night had probably disappeared. Like I said, the two of us did manage to get out of that hole. But we didn't escape from it, we were rescued. From out of nowhere, a long rope made from vines was thrown down into the hole. We yell out to whoever threw it down, and a voice shouts back at us, an English-speaking voice. We get out of the hole, and what we see are two middle-aged white men, with thick moustaches and dressed like jungle explorers from the 1800s. But they weren't alone. With them were around 20 African men, dressed only in dark blue trousers and holding spears or arrows. The two white men introduced themselves to us. The names are Jacob, an American from the southern states, and Reuben, a Belgian. Although I was at first relieved to be seeing white faces again, I then noticed their strange expressions. Something about these men scared me. They smiled at me with the most unnerving grins, and their voices were so old-fashioned I could barely understand them. There was something about their eyes that was dark, incredibly dark. And the African men with them, they were expressionless. They barely blinked or made any kind of gesture, like they were in some kind of trance. The American man, Jacob, he gets up close and he's just staring at me, like he was amazed by my appearance. I didn't want to look at him, but couldn't help but feel pulled up into his gaze. Looking into this man's eyes, I couldn't help but feel terrified. I didn't even know why. When they were done with me, they turned their attention to Ty. Without even saying a word to them, Jacob and Reuben treat Ty as though he was somehow offending them, as though just his appearance was enough to make them angry. Jacob orders something to the African men in a different language, and they tackle Ty to the ground, like they were arresting him. They brought us away with them, past the mutilated remains of the zombie people from the night before. They tied Ty's hands behind his back and were pulling him along with a rope vine, like he was no better than a dog. They didn't treat me this way. Well, Jacob and Reuben seemed to be happy to see me, so they treated me as though they already knew me. Walking through the jungle for another day, they brought us to where they lived. From the distance, what we saw was a huge fortification of some kind, made from long wooden walls. The closer we got to this place, well, I could begin to see all the details, and it was horror. Along the top of the walls, more African men in blue trousers were guarding, but above them, on long wooden spikes, were at least a dozen severed heads. Or worse than this, right outside the walls of the fort were wooden crosses, 5 of them, but on them, inside them, were decaying, rotting corpses. A long wooden spike had been forced through one end and out of the other, through the back of their skull, while another was shoved underneath their arms horizontally, making them into a cross. The crucified man. Inside the walls of the fort was a whole army of African men wearing the same identical blue trousers and all with the same empty expressions. They lived in a village of thatched roof huts, too many to count. Making our way through the village towards the center of the fort, we came across 4 large wooden cabins, decorated in pieces of white ivory. Then I saw something that was remotely familiar. Outside the wooden cabins, in a sort of courtyard, was a familiar face. It was the dead tree with a face. Only it had been carved to resemble a statue, an idol, and on top of that idol, staring down at me, was the very same face. The face from my dreams had finally shown itself to me. But the worst part was still yet to come. Even worse than the dead, mutilated bodies. What we found next was what we'd come here to find. We found the others. Yeah, we found Naadia, and we found the other commune members. They were still alive, but they were all crammed inside of a small wooden cage. They were being held prisoners, and even worse, they were being held... Oh, I can't say it. Jacob and Reuben weren't the only 2 white people here. There were 2 more. One of them was a woman, a blonde Swedish woman. Her name was Ingrid. Dragging the bottom of her dirty white dress towards me, she seemed just as amazed to see me as Jacob and Reuben. Touching my face, she, for some reason, had tears in her eyes, like I was someone close to her she hadn't seen for a long time. This woman, although I thought she was very beautiful, she was clearly insane. But then I met the last white face that lived here, their leader. From the middle, larger of the cabins, an old man walked down toward us. Like the other 3, he wore white Victorian-like clothing. He had a thick grey beard and his body was round, and somehow he looked how I always imagined God would look like. This man was called Lucien, and like the others, he spoke in an old-fashioned way, with a strong French accent. He came right up to me, up close to my face, and he stared at me with a serious expression, like there was no joy inside of him. But from his serious gaze, I saw he had the clearest blue eyes, and I realized his eyes were very much like my own. Staring through me for a good while, the piercing look on his face quickly turned to joy. Uttering some words in French, Lucien pulled me into him and started hugging me as tight as he could. His arms around me were so strong, and even though he was clearly happy to see me, whoever I was to him, he was squeezing me like he was intentionally trying to hurt me. And I was so confused as to who these white people were, who seemed like they were from 100 years ago. Well, even though they terrified me to my core, I knew they were the ones to give me the answers I'd been looking for. Lucien told me everything. He said this place, this dark, never-ending part of the jungle, the Asili, he said it was called the Undying Circle. People who entered the circle could never leave. It would attract people to it, those chosen. Now, the circle was very old and was basically an ancient god, a sort of consciousness. The four of them, dressed in their white linen clothing, spoke like they were from the 1800s because they were. They had come to Africa at the end of the 19th century. Wandering into the undying circle, they'd been here ever since, stuck, frozen in time. Jacob and Reuben were soldiers. When the Europeans were still colonizing Africa, they were hired by the King of Belgium to seize control of the Congo. They wandered into the circle to conquer new territory or exploit whatever resources it had. But the circle conquered them. Lucien and Ingrid came to Africa as Catholic missionaries. They came here to spread the word of God to the uncivilized people. They heard that a great evil existed inside the darkest regions of the jungle, and so they ventured inside to try and convert whatever savages lurked there. And now they were the savages. Lucien said they found people already living inside the circle. He said they were Stone Age savages who were more like beasts than men. Jacob and Reuben's army went to war with them and killed them all. They took their kingdom for themselves and made it their own. They chose Lucien as their leader and worshipped the undying circle as their new god, the god who allowed them to live forever. In this jungle they were kings, and they could do whatever they wanted. But they still weren't alone in the jungle. Whoever lived here before, the ones who survived Lucien's army, they formed themselves into a new kingdom, a new tribe. Lucien's army had killed all the men, but some of the women survived. They were a tribe of women, but Jacob said they weren't women anymore, not even human. There was something else. Like them, they worshipped the circle as a god, but believed it was female. Whatever it was they worshipped, Jacob said it turned them into some sort of creatures who painted their skin red, head to toe in the blood of their enemies. They were extremely tall, with long, stretched-out limbs, and even had sharp teeth and talons. Jacob said they were cannibals who ate the flesh of men. Well, this all sounded like racist bullshit to me. But in the Asili, in the undying circle, it seemed every nightmare was possible. The reason why they were so happy to find me, why they acted as though they already knew me, wasn't because of the color of my skin or where I was from. It's because they knew the circle would bring me here. In his dreams, Lucien said the circle promised to bring him a son. And Lucien believed I was his great-great-great-something grandson, that I was here to inherit his kingdom. I told him he was wrong. He was French and I was English, and even though we shared similar blue eyes, I told him it wasn't possible. But Lucien told me something else. Before he came into the undying circle, he said he'd had a son. He broke his vows and had gotten a native woman pregnant. He took the baby away from her and gave it to an English missionary. Whoever this missionary was, he brought the baby back with him to England to be raised and educated in the civilized world. I didn't know if he was telling the truth. I mean, was I really his descendant? Well, I didn't believe it. I chose not to believe it. I wasn't one of them. I would never be one of them. Oh, they made me do things. They forced me to do things I didn't want to do. They kept prisoners. Jacob forced me to beat them. He put his sword in my hands and made me kill the ones who were too weak to work. He made me cut off their hands. He wanted me to keep them as trophies. The female prisoners who the white men found attractive, they were forced to roam free as concubines. Naadia was one of them. If she wasn't, I would have been forced to hurt her. And even after everything she put me through, cheating on me, lying on me, tricking me into coming to this place I never should have come to, but after that I still couldn't do it. But I did it to the rest of them. And what's worse is that I enjoyed doing it to them. I enjoyed it. It made me feel powerful. This group, that from day one looked at me like I was unwanted, unaccepted, made me feel guilty because of the color of my skin. Every hour of pain I put them through, I took pleasure from it. The one I wanted to hurt most of all was Ty. God, I hated him. I was jealous of him. He took Naadia away from me. I wanted to make him suffer, but I couldn't. He wasn't my prisoner. He was Ingrid's. He was Ingrid's concubine. I couldn't touch him, and it infuriated me. There's something you need to understand. This place, the undying circle, the Asili, brings out the darkest parts of you. Yeah, whatever darkness lies in your heart, the circle brings it out of you, allows it to overtake you. Jacob and Reuben came here as soldiers, and now they were tyrants. They were monsters. Ingrid was from a time when women were oppressed, and now she oppressed those who were seen as beneath her. Lucien came to spread the message of the God he loved. Now he denounced him. He served another God, an evil God. In this place, in this jungle, he was God. I was a white guy from London. Diversity was all I knew. I accepted anyone and everyone, even if they never really accepted me. Is this what I truly am? In my darkest of hearts, am I a racist? Of all the horrors I came across in that jungle, I feared myself the most. I was a god here, a king. I had power over life and death. I didn't want it. I didn't want any of it. Whatever part of me was still good, I called upon it. And the man I was before, he wasn't here anymore. He lived on the other side of the Asili. Beth and Chantal were dead. They died of weakness. Last I saw of them, they were just skin and bone. As long as Naadia was a concubine, at least she was being fed. As for Moses and Jerome, two young, strong African men, well, they became soldiers in Jacob and Reuben's army. Things they did were almost as bad as me. Like me, the circle preyed on their darkness. But they didn't want to be soldiers. They didn't want to be followers. They wanted to be free. So they escaped the fortress and took their chances in the jungle. It didn't take long for Jacob and Reuben to find them. They had already killed Jerome, put his head on top of the wall with the others. But they gave Moses to me. They made me cut off his hands while he was still alive. I could hear Naadia screaming at me to stop, but I kept on beating him until he wasn't screaming anymore. Moses loved God. He loved Jesus Christ, and even though he begged them in his final moments, no one was there. Yeah, Moses looked for God in his final moments, but didn't find him. I looked for that part of me that was supposed to be good, that once knew love and kindness. Every night I woke only to see the darkness and the smell of death, but one night, through the surrounding black void of my cabin, I found him. I saw him through the darkness. He told me what I needed to do, why I'd come here in the first place. Well, that night I went out of my cabin. The fort was quiet, empty, but the torches were still lit all around. Ty was in the courtyard, tied to a wooden pole by his neck. I held up my knife to him. I wanted him to know that I had the power to kill him, but instead I was going to cut him free. Even though he had no reason to, I needed him to trust me. I told him we needed to save Naadia. Then the three of us were getting out of this place, that we'd take our chances in the jungle. Well, Ty was expressionless. The circle's darkness had clearly gotten to him. He looked up at me, with murder in his eyes, but then he agreed. He was with me. As Ty went away in the direction of Ingrid's cabin, I went into Reuben's. I opened the door slowly. I couldn't see, but I could hear him breathing. I put my hand over the sound coming from his mouth, and with my knife I pressed it into his neck. I heard him react under my hand, and I pressed down even harder. I heard the blood gurgling inside his mouth and felt his nails scrape deep into my skin. But now Reuben was dead. I had killed him while he slept, and in his final moments, he didn't even know why. I'll leave Reuben's cabin and I make my way towards Jacob's. I found Ty there, waiting for me. I asked him if he'd done it, and he looked at me blankly and said, "I strangled her." And the way Ty looked at me, I was afraid of him. I now knew what he was capable of, but I needed him. We went inside Jacob's cabin. He was sleeping with Naadia next to him. She saw us through the glow of the outside torches, and we gestured for her to be quiet. By the bedside was Jacob's sword, the same one he'd made me use to do my killings. So I took it. Standing over Jacob, Ty looked at me, waiting for me to give the signal. As I raised Jacob's sword, Ty quickly put his hands over Jacob's mouth. I saw Jacob's eyes open wide. Looking up to Ty, he then instantly looked at me, seeing I was holding his own sword over him. I stuck it deep into his belly as hard as I could. I saw his eyes scrunch up as Ty kept his groans inside. I took out the blade and I kept on stabbing him, covering me and Ty in Jacob's own blood. Well, Jacob tried grabbing the sword, but it only sliced through his hands. By the time he was dead, his hands were still holding the blade. Having killed Jacob, the three of us left the cabin. The fort was still quiet and no one had heard our actions. We knew we couldn't just leave the fort. Soldiers were still guarding the front entrance. We knew we had to create a distraction, so we took one of the fire torches and we set Ingrid's and Jacob's cabins on fire. We hid in the darkest parts of the fort until the fire was so large it woke up Lucien and all of Jacob's soldiers. It seemed everyone had gathered round the burning cabins to try and put out the flames, and as they tried, we made our escape. The entrance was unguarded, so we ran outside the fort and into the darkness of the jungle. We journeyed through the Circle's jungle for days, unsure where it was we were even going. We knew we could never escape, but taking our chances out in this jungle was better than the hell that existed inside there. God, I feared what we'd run into, what we'd find. I feared that Lucien and his army would be coming after us. I feared the predatory monsters we'd only seen glimpses of, and I feared that Jacob was telling the truth, and there was some tribe of man-eating creatures who'd be stalking us. But just like when we first entered this jungle, we saw nothing. Again, we were trapped among the same identical trees and vegetation. Before the Circle, the Asili just seemed as though it spat us back out. We were free. God, we'd found our way out of that place. We were still in the jungle, the real jungle, but whatever dangers the Congo had, it was nothing compared to the horrors in there. We found our way back to the river, back down to Kinshasa, and finally we found our way home. We never told the truth about what happened to us. We said we got lost, that the others had died of disease or hunger. It was easy for them to believe because the truth wasn't. I went back to London, and Naadia went home to her family. I tried to get in touch with her, but I couldn't. She ignored my texts, my calls. She no longer wanted anything to do with me. And to this day, I don't even know where she is, if she went back to the States to be with Ty. For the past 3 years, I felt completely alone. I've had to live with what I've been through, alone. But it's what I deserve. The Asili had turned me into a monster, a murderer. It almost seems like just a bad dream, that it wasn't really me that committed all those things. But it was. If you're wondering how it was we got out of that place, well, I think the Asili allowed us to leave, like it wanted us to. Whatever the Asili was, it was evil. It had worshippers, followers. It was basically a religion. Maybe it wanted us to tell the world what we'd seen and been through. Maybe it wanted more people to come here and bow to its will. Maybe I'm doing more damage than good by admitting its existence. Well, we never found out what happened to Angela. I don't even know if she's still alive. Maybe she's still out there somewhere, surviving. What if the tribe of women had found her? What if they weren't the monsters Jacob said they were? That they were just survivors who fought against Lucien's tyranny? Angela was a warrior. She knew how to survive. I'd almost like to think she became one of them. If she never escaped the Asili like we did, I'd like to think that that's the best fate she could have had. Well, I did my research. I tried to find whatever I could to explain what the Asili really is. I only came up with one answer. It's the center of evil. Evil leaks out of that place, slowly infecting the farthest corners of the world. The Congo has always been at war with itself, and anyone who goes there turns into that very same evil. The first white man who came to the Congo, they didn't bring peace, they didn't bring civilization. They murdered millions. They collected severed hands and traded them like they were currency. 10 million Africans were murdered here when the first white men came to the Congo. But that's what the Asili is. It isn't the undying circle. It's the heart of darkness itself. I don't care if anyone doesn't believe me. Just take my warning. Stay far away from the jungles of Africa. Just stay where you are and live in ignorance. And for anyone who doesn't listen, for whatever reason you go there, no matter how good your intentions are, take my warning and burn it all to the ground. Okay, so those of you who've suffered through years of this channel will know that sometimes I start a story and then don't finish it off. There's a couple of notable occasions I've done that in the last year or so. There's a brilliant story called The Call of the Breach, not connected to the Breach stories I did about 5, 6, 7 years ago. Anyway, it's a 40-part story. I've done parts 1 and 2 and I've left it for more than a year now. And it's brilliant and I should get back to it. Another one about bizarre pizza delivery jobs, which was a lot of fun, and I haven't got back to that either. Anyway, so yeah, don't, if there's something that you want me to do, please do keep nagging at me. But anyway, you know me too well by now that it doesn't necessarily end that well, but it's in my head, as clustered and weird and messed up as that is. But, I do listen to what you want, so enough of this nonsense. I'll be back again very soon, my dear friends. Till the next time, hope you enjoyed this one and have some sweet dreams, yeah? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.